On the first day of school, the children in Mrs. Apple's second grade class had to bring one thing from home for show and tell. Everyone shared their hobbies or showed off their favorite toys. Pepe stayed at his desk and shoved the comic book he had spent all summer drawing back into his bag. Compared to the cool tricks and animals, Pepe's drawings felt childish. "What do you have to show us today, Pepe?" asked Mrs. Apple. He reached into his pocket, felt only a ball of lint. "It's my special pet," he said. "It has horns like a ram, claws like a bear, wings like a bat, eyes like an owl, and a tail like a lion's." "That sounds like a fib," said Tommy. "Yes," said Pepe, not knowing what the word meant. "That's what it's called. It's a fib." Pepe opened his hand. In his palm sat a tiny creature with horns like a ram, claws like a bear, wings like a bat, eyes like an owl, and a tail like a lion's. "So cool," said Maria. "Where did you get it?" I found it in Mexico," Pepe said, knowing it wasn't true. The fib popped out of his hand and sprouted 2 feet tall. "Is that normal?" asked Teresa. "Of course," Pepe said, though he really had no idea. "I would know. I'm an expert on fibs." The fib's belly stretched like a water balloon. The whole class inched closer to the fib. "Does it bite?" asked Tommy. "Not at all," said Pepe, not knowing if it was true. The fib's teeth grew long and pointy. Tommy shrieked and jumped back. "Pepe, I think it's time you took your fib home," Mrs. Apple said nervously. "But the principal said it was okay," Pepe replied. He had already lied once. What was another lie? The fib grew so large its horns bumped into the ceiling, while its tail and claws scraped against the floor. Without warning, the fib lashed its tail and growled so loudly it rumbled like thunder across the school. The children dashed down the hall, screaming. "Pepe, tell your fib to behave," said a trembling Mrs. Apple. "Don't worry," Pepe said. "Everything's fine." Though this time, Pepe didn't believe his own lie. The fib opened its wings and let out a ferocious roar before it smashed through the window. Pepe watched the fib circle the building as its stomach let out a loud rumble that filled the sky. Rumble, grumble. The fib licked its lips and zipped toward the playground. "No!" Pepe shouted at the hungry fib. But then the fib swooped down and took a chomp out of the jungle gym. "The fib's gonna eat us!" Maria shrieked. "Stop!" Pepe screamed again, this time as loudly as he could. But the fib ignored his pleas. Pepe had lost control of the fib. Desperate, Pepe cried, "Mrs. Apple, how do I make my fib stop? I don't know anything about fibs." "A fib is a small lie," Mrs. Apple explained. But that couldn't be. Pepe's fib was huge and scary and flying toward them. "And the only way to get rid of a fib is by telling the truth," Mrs. Apple said. "Maria, I didn't find the fib in Mexico." The fib's horns shrank into nubs. "Teresa, I'm not an expert on fibs." The fib's belly deflated like a flat tire. "Tommy, my fib definitely bites." The fib's teeth receded into its gums. "Mrs. Apple, the principal didn't give me permission to bring the fib." The fib's wings disappeared. "Everything is not fine." The fib's body shriveled as it landed on Pepe's palm, tiny as a ball of lint. "I made it all up. I didn't have anything cool for show and tell. I'm sorry for telling people a fib. I didn't know it could hurt people." The fib vanished in a puff of smoke. "You did the right thing, Pepe," Mrs. Apple said. "But I don't want the fib to disappear. He's still my pet." "I suppose a fib isn't bad if everybody knows it's make-believe to begin with," Mrs. Apple said. That gave Pepe an idea. After class, he drew a comic book about a monster with horns like a ram, claws like a bear, wings like a bat, eyes like an owl, and a tail like a lion's. And most importantly, this fib could never hurt anyone.